Week 12, let me introduce our speaker. Jeffrey Combs is a renowned author, speaker, and success coach and addiction coach who specializes in separating feelings from past events in a process called letting go. Jeffrey started his business Golden Mastermind Seminars 23 years ago in 1998, and since then has coached over 17,000 clients and 70,000 one-on-one hours. Jeff has published 5 books, including a #1 on Amazon's best-selling list, and has been featured on social media publications, magazines, radio, Fox, ABC, CBS, and Lifetime. Jeff is available for one-on-one coaching, as well as keynote speeches, podcast Zooms, and Facebook Lives. I highly endorse Jeff. Jeff, tonight our topic is empowering self, empowering others, week 12, all yours.
Thank you so much, Desiree. It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I highly endorse you. I've had the privilege of knowing you since 2010, and I've watched you absolutely transform. I've watched you go from being a top-tier sales professional in corporate America to being a leader, a mentor, and a leader grower in network marketing and direct sales. So week number 12, I'm inspired to share some exceptional content for you tonight, specifically on empowerment, empowering self and others. In 2002, I started a publishing company called Empower You Now, and I bought the rights to a book from Phil Lott. For those of you who have never read Phil Lott, he wrote the book Money is My Friend. He published that book in 1979, and in 2001, I bought the rights to that book from him, and I added 3 chapters. And that was one of my LLCs back in the day, Empower You Now. And it means exactly what it means. M is my power. Power is an energy that stands alone. Power does not require any outside influence. In 2006, David Hawkins wrote the groundbreaking book, Power versus Force. If you do not have this book, I highly recommend it. You can read chapter 8 for the next 10 years. It's called The Source of Power, and it breaks down what force is and what power is. Power is its energy that doesn't consume anyone. It's a non-consumable energy. And when you're in your power, you're in a relaxed state of consciousness. And empowerment allows you to be able to be highly productive without exhausting yourself, because you're not overwhelmed. You're not in panic patterns. You're not in fight or flight. You're not in anxiety, fear, and doubt. You're in your power. And that's a graduated state of consciousness that every one of you on tonight's Zoom tonight can graduate into that. The first step into empowerment is called courage. Now, if you're living in anxiety, fear, and doubt, or you're worried about the economy, you're worried about what's going on in the world, or you're worried about your job, or you're worried about money, any worry is what creates overwhelm. And there are 3 phases of the brain that we get overwhelmed in. That is the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. And this is what creates brain fog. When you're in a brain fog, you're holding on to trauma. The pinball machine is going off. You have challenges deciding and committing, and you'll spend a lot of time getting ready to get ready in an indecisive state of consciousness. And this is when you're in worry, your body's in hypervigilance. You're not crazy, you have brain fog. We all have it. I've experienced it. When you come off of addiction, you move into sobriety. If you leave a traumatic relationship and you move into healthy relationships, if you've been in a job and then all of a sudden now you're in the isogenics team, you're moving out of the brain fog into an opportunity for you to be your best self. And that's what empowering yourself is. Empowering others is taking what you've done with yourself, raising your energy up into consciousness, and then being able to be a steward, be a mentor, be a leader, and be a leader grower. And in power, you're not codependent, because you're not dependent on someone else. Codependency is where you take yourself and then you become dependent on fixing, enabling, over obligating yourself to others. And it's a very common commonality. I'm in recovery of it myself, of being a codependent. And in power, you can become non-attached, which is a confusing statement to many people because many people who don't understand consciousness view detachment and non-attachment as someone who doesn't care. It's actually the exact opposite. Non-attachment allows you to participate without being attached. So if you have a narcissistic mother or father, you can actually have a relationship or conversation with them, and they can say what they say to you, but in power, when you're empowered, you can be so humble that you can't be humiliated, meaning that you understand who they are, where they're coming from, and you're not personalizing it. You're able to let it go easily and effortlessly. And when you're in your power, you don't get attached to a prospect or a teammate. You understand that in the law of plenty, people come and go, and you're able to easily and effortlessly let people go. Now, in the first 11 weeks of our Zoom with Desiree, I've had the absolute privilege of really getting to know the culture of the team. Those of you who've reached out to me, or I've watched you, or I've followed you on Facebook. It's been my absolute privilege to be able to share some of these empowering skills. And the more that you understand that your power is going to be a direct reflection of what you let go of, what you hold on to will be force. What you let go of will be power. And that power, when you're in your power, you're in your best self. And you're transmuting love and joy and bliss. And you're not coming from any force. And you're able to be in a state of flow. And there's an effortless ease. Now, in power in sports, that's where holes in ones are. That's when your sight and your vision in a sport like a baseball looks like a grapefruit. It doesn't look like a BB. Or there's a state of flow where it's coming together. It's an alignment. And when you're in your power, you're absolutely in that alignment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so whoever you
How are you doing today?
Thank you. I appreciate it. And regardless, when you're in your power, you're in that state of flow. So that's also called the zone. And in the zone is an effortless ease. Now you can condition and train yourself to live in this zone. Now, in the zone or in power, you will seldom be in conflict because you're non-attached. You can let other people be in conflict without you feeling that you have to step in. You don't have to make them wrong. You don't have to be right. You don't have to correct them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to hold on to them. You're able to be non-attached. Detachment comes from an indifference. Detachment comes from anger. Detachment comes from being pissed off. So you can be detached from someone, and that's when you're giving someone the cold shoulder, or they're trying to give you the cold shoulder. But when you're in your power, it doesn't matter to you because you see it for what it is. I had a neighbor come over to my house yesterday, and she buzzed the bell, and she was very pissed off that my contractors were making noise on a Sunday. Now, the old me would have been very pissed off, and I would have gotten in conflict with her, and I would have made her wrong. And I would have said, I have the ability, it's my right if I want to make noise on Sunday, I'll make noise. And she was looking for conflict from me. I know who she is. And I was able to neutralize it very easily and effortlessly. This was not always the case because I would have fallen prey right into that. And then I would have worried I would have made a mistake, and I would have been overwhelmed, and I got in trouble, and I would have given my power away. And then I would go over and I'd want to apologize to her and make it right and fix the situation. Well, that's not who I am today, but that's part of the recovery process. I let her be right. Went over and talked to my contractor, asked him to turn off the jackhammer, and we'll come back tomorrow. And he also was very pissed off, and he goes, well, I have the right to work on Sunday if I want to. I go, it's cool, but let's just end it today. And I was able to give him a hug, and he came over today and finished the project that he started on. But that would not have been the case 20 plus years ago. I would have exhausted myself, spent time making others wrong, getting in the ring with them, and then being in conflict and exhausting myself and spending a lot of time in my head. That is called sobriety, letting go of the outcome, letting go of letting people be right. Letting go is such a skill that it's a skill. And when you're skilled at this skill, you are skilled. And letting go, when you're letting go, you are always letting go, because letting go will go everywhere with you. It goes in the suitcase, goes on the plane, goes in the car, it goes to bed with you. And you will seldom be in conflict when you've learned to let go, because you just realize that the pleasure isn't worth the pain. This is when you cross the bridge. This is when your weight begins to shift. You don't carry the weight of the world. When you're releasing organically. You're not trying to control situations. You're not trying to fix people. You're in your power. Now, this is a repetition and experience, meaning that this requires skills. This requires doing the same reflex over and over and letting go. Don said he was listening to content of mine. I commend him. I'm Don's coach, and I've watched him in the last 12 weeks plus since I've been coaching him. He's starting to create that shift in consciousness, that letting go. So Don was a really good athlete in high school, and he and I have that in common. We also have a love of music in common. So if I was listening to some of my favorite bands, I'm in my power because I'm just like in it. I'm in the moment of it. I just feel it. Or you can hear that jingle from an old song. It's just like, ah. So in that consciousness, you're just in a flow state. It just brings you back to familiar memories. It brings you back to more innocent times. It can take you back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. You're just like, you're just flowing in it. Well, that's the zone. And you can find that zone easily and effortlessly when you're not so overwhelmed. But when you're conditioned to be in trauma bonds and panic patterns, and you're hyper vigilant and in fight or flight all the time, there is no flow because the brain is overtime. The brain is operating in a high state of hypervigilance and fight or flight. It's worried about outcomes. It's worried about people. It's worried about making mistakes, getting in trouble, saying the wrong thing. It's worried about, am I going to be able to pay the bills, pay the freight? And so the brain becomes occupied with putting out fires and problems. And then what happens is that overwhelmed state, it creates the results that get created is you just pull it off at the last minute. You wing it and you pull it off and you feel, oh my God. And you become addicted to that adrenaline cortisol hit that you get from winging it and pulling it off. And there's no flow in it. There's no power. It's force. And you force yourself to pay your taxes. You force yourself to go to the gym. You force yourself to go on a diet. And you start to, and then what happens is when you force yourself, so there are points and moments where you start to feel so good that you start to doubt yourself. I shouldn't be feeling this good. This might go away, this feeling I have. I better relapse so I can do it all over again. And that's what happens to so many people. They live in a force counterforce situation. They're forcing themselves to do situations, or they attract people to be in that conflict with. And there's no power in it. Now, the ego goes, yeah, but how do I? Well, there is no yeah, but. It's an I am state. I am letting go. I'm accepting that this is what I do. The breakthrough factor and the breakthrough that you require to understand, it comes from honesty and acceptance. But when you live in denial, not knowing why you do what you do, not understanding why you do what you do, trying to make sense of what you do, and telling yourself that doesn't make sense. Well, this isn't about making sense. That's force. This isn't about forcing pennies, making sense. You don't do that. You're not making sense. What you're doing is you let go of the analytical egoic mind that craves the answer. And you let go and you move more into I know state. When you doubt what you know, you're in doubt. When you know what you know, you know. When you know what you know, there is no doubt because that's belief. Simon Sinek was so awesome back in 2012 and 13 when he came out with a book, Start With Why. I remember the big white flip chart he had, and he drew the golden circle. But the most fond memory of listening to his content, reading his book, is what he said about belief. Attract people who believe what you believe. So when you believe that you're good enough, you're going to attract a few people who are also good enough. When you believe that you're capable, you'll attract a few people, the law of the few. But your law of the few changes because you begin to attract the law of the few in higher calibrated numbers. And so in a leveraged business, this can completely change the game. When you can attract a few people who believe what you believe, and then these people don't require a lot of hand-holding, they don't require training, they join you at a stage of where you are because of your empowerment. They join you at a stage of your own growth and your own recovery. And these are the people that come into your business and they change the flow of the business. They change the game. And it's not just your business, it's their business. They come into a business and they require little supervision. They already have skills and habits developed, and you attract them because of the person you become. And you're empowering people now. You're empowering people because you're leading by example. You're no longer in an overwhelmed state. You're no longer doubting yourself. You're not going up and down, and you start to change who and what you attract. Your cycles grow, your teammates, you start to rank advance, and you can see the quantum effects begin to happen. This is where 2 + 2 = 16. It is called the quantum leap. Sum is greater than whole of parts. And that can absolutely happen to you in this business right here, this year, 2022. And what's going to allow that to happen is your commitment, your decision. And it begins to mean more than just the spelling, DECISION, COMMITMENT. So the words can mouth it, but there's a different level of belief in it. That means the tone comes up. So one of the ways that you attract your reality, the people and situations that you're seeking, is through the tone of your voice. But if you've been taught to tone it down and you're living this hypervigilance, low self-esteem, barely getting by, tiptoeing quietly through life, barely able to pay the bills. You want to move to another state. You want to buy a home. You want to pay your debt off. I mean, you want, but the commitment isn't there because the energy isn't behind the words. So that's the difference between a wish and an affirmation. That's the difference between a belief. That means a sense of certainty, a sense of purpose. There is no purpose until you're committed, and that commitment has to exude. That's what empowerment is. That power that exudes from you, that's what people feel. That's called posture. And people feel that, and they want to buy from you. They don't even know what they're buying. They just want to be a part of what you're doing. I just did a Zoom call right before this Zoom call, and leads were just like this, where people are going, I want to hire you. I'm ready to join you. And so that happens to me all the time. It didn't always happen to me all the time, but that's the transcending levels of consciousness. That's when you start to attract people who believe what you believe. That's the compassion. That's the passion. That's the commitment. That's the edge that exudes from you. And you're not up in your head just trying to figure it all out and just talking and do it. That's what many people do. When you are in your power, you talk less and you exude more. And when you're in your power, you're not explaining, validating, justifying. You're not being the man. You're not being the woman. You're being yourself. You're being your best self. And that's a very relaxed energy that in the morphinogenic field, that's the field of energy around you, it begins to shift and change. And that means that's what transcending consciousness is. It means you go from being down here in anxiety, fear, and doubt, and it can happen in a minute. It can happen in a day. It can happen in a week. It can happen in a month. It can happen on any given Saturday or Sunday. David beats Goliath. You actually start to beat your ego. You start to let go of that ego, that lower self that holds on to being in force, counterforce relationships, and you start to step up into your power. When you start to understand what power is, and I highly recommend you buy the book, Power versus Force. Don't read the book cover to cover. That's what you learn to do in school. Go straight to chapter 8 in Power versus Force and read the chapter, The Source of Power. First 5 pages are some of the best content I've ever read in my life, and it covers what empowerment is. Empowerment is an energy. It's an energy that you're walking through in life. It's not cocky. It's not arrogant. It's not abrasive. It's a very cool, quiet energy. It's called posture. And that posture means you know who you are, you know what you're capable of, and you're living it in a very relaxed body. And people feel that. It becomes, it's called magnetic persuasion. It's a sex energy that people want to be a part of. It's an energy that emanates. It's a people feel you. And they want to buy from you. They want to join you. They don't even know what you're doing or who you're being. I mean, I've been on airplanes before, excuse me. I don't know who you are, but and I've had that's happen. And it's because of but I've also been in places in my life where I'm saying they're so pissed off that I'm going to alienate everyone just because I'm in that grind, the energy that comes off. And I felt like I was behind the 8 ball. I was behind in my life. I should be further along. And that's force. And when I learned to let go of that force, my headaches that I had created went away. I got clean and sober in 1988. And within 1 year's time, I developed a migraine headache. Now, I understand it now, what happened, but I didn't understand it then. Then I started reading a book by Dr. John Sarno. First, I read Healing Back Pain. My neck was out every day. My back was out every day. And then he had another book called The Mind-Body Prescription. And that book was a game changer for me because he broke down a syndrome called tension myositis syndrome that hypervigilant people in fight or flight, people that are in a lot of pressure create that pressure in their upper cervical. And that's what had happened to me. And I put that, and that's what created my headaches. And once I started to understand that and learn what letting go means, the headaches went away. It didn't come from aspirin. It didn't come from adjustments. It didn't come from chiropractors. It came from the skill of letting go. And that changed my energy within 1 year. Within 1 year of understanding that content, I had my first multiple six-figure business. And this can happen to you. It doesn't have to be 1 year. It can be one thought, one moment, one idea. I mean, the game changes when you're willing to let go. The whole energy changes and shifts when you're willing to let go. But when you're standing behind it, you're going, what does that mean to let go? It doesn't make sense. Well, letting go isn't about sense. Letting go is a longer breath cycle. If you grow up in hypervigilance, if you grow up where you had to be the man or the woman, if you grow up and you lost your identity, if you lost your ability to be a child and you're in this anxiety all the time, by the time you're 18, your personal reality is your personality and you're overwhelmed. And you've lived in that overwhelmed, hypervigilant, fight or flight state in conflict and trauma bonds and panic patterns. Well, you can let go of that beginning whenever you're ready to let go of it. I suggest it's now, not after the Zoom or not later or not when you pray tonight, but right now. That's the first situation you do is you commit. You don't even have to know what you're committing to, you commit, and then you can figure the rest out later. Now that is a skill set right there of power. When you let go of control and you commit without really knowing what it's going to require, you commit. But if you have to know everything before you commit, you'll never commit because you have to know everything. And this is what many people say to me, I'm going to hire you when it's perfect. Well, it's never perfect, so they never hire me. And I've seen it in the thousands of times. It's called a good intention versus a commitment. When you're committed, the money shows up, or when you're committed, people show up. When you're committed, there's other people of like energy and like mind begin to show up on command. So in really bringing this to the crescendo of 12 weeks, it's been my absolute privilege to be here with you. Now, I know that some of you have been listening to the calls and downloading them and putting them into application, along with the other great content you're receiving from your leaders. Now, you want to take a really good look at where we are in the world. It's 2022. A lot is happening in the world, and there's never going to be a better time for you to be self-sufficient. As the escalating cost of living, houses, the shortage of houses. In some states, it's 10 to 1, 10 buyers, 1 property. Some states, 15 to 1. I mean, now's the time that it's going to be your responsibility to be your best self. And there's no shortage of prospects. There's no shortage of money. What there is a shortage of courage. And if you have that, then you're a man and a woman who's in demand. Because not many people have that courage. They just keep tiptoeing quietly through life, waiting for more handouts. What you're looking for, people are looking for a hand up. Someone who says, show me the way. That's empowerment. Someone who says, I'm committed. You can track that to your reality beginning tonight. And the more that you understand that you are completely capable of being a 6- and 7-figure income earner, the more that you understand, the more that you commit, the more that you know, the more that you realize, the clearer your vision. All these cliches you heard, but you begin to put them into concurrence where they're happening at the same time, like this. And you begin to massage your own energy. You can feel it. You know it. It's right here. It's right now. You can feel it. Magic is happening. But it cannot possibly happen when you have this low vibration, this low energy with no tone. And another situation you can practice on 7 days a week is your breathing and your tone. Use words like absolutely, unequivocally. It means that you have to put inflection in your words and you start to feel that power in your words. But when you've been taught to tone it down, when you've been taught that children are to be seen, not heard, when you don't have a voice and you're not able to speak up, and you've been in relationships where you've been put in positions where you have to validate, justify, and explain yourself, then you have no tone. And it's time you really find your tone, find yourself, step in your power, empower yourself, so you can empower others. And that empowerment is not entitlement. Empowerment is the power that you exude. It's love, it's joy, it's bliss. It's like, I know I can be that man. I know I can be that woman. And you see other people are doing it, and you don't look at them with jealousy or envy. You look at them with passion, because you know they're being that person. You can be that. They're leading by example. You can be that person. When I used to go to events and see people on stage, I said, I'm going to do that. I can feel that. But Then I was doing it for recognition. But when I learned how to really empower myself, it wasn't so much about the stage. It was about being able to be self-sufficient, where I'm not dependent upon anyone else. And that's what being an entrepreneur will be for you. It's the ability to be self-sufficient in free enterprise, where you can create and attract what the free market will bear, where there are no limitations, so that you can be a 6-figure income earner, or a 6-figure monthly income earner, or a 7-figure monthly income earner. I coach a man right now. He's in the non-fundable tokens, that is in the meta world. He's having 7-figure months. I coach an FX trader who's making $5 million a year. And I mean, these people all started where you did. I mean, they all started as wanting to be an entrepreneur, crossing the bridge and staying on the other side of that bridge long enough to find a skill set that they can master. And you're in a business that doesn't require a lot of overhead. You're in a business that doesn't require you to have a storefront. You're in a business that, from the comfort of your apartment, in the corner, on a desk, on your coffee table, on your living room table, you can have your first 6-figure year. It's why not me? Why not now? Be and stay in your power. It has been my absolute privilege and pleasure to be here with you for the 12 weeks. Desiree, I want to really, from the center of my heart, gratitude for having me share with these awesome people over a 12-week period. Those of you who have hired me, I'm honored to be your coach through the rest of this year. It's going to be an absolute exceptional year. Desiree, I'm going to go ahead and pass the call or the Zoom back to you. If anyone would like to ask me 1 or 2 questions, I'll receive them. If not, I'm going to go ahead and go produce some results.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Jeff? Anyone? Well, I will speak, Jeff. This has been, was somebody ready to speak?
Oh, no, I just said great call with Jeff. It's just a great Zoom.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jeff, thank you so much. I can't believe how fast the 12 weeks went by, but you delivered for us. We appreciate you. And for those people that hired you, they're going to be in great hands. And I appreciate you very, very much. And I'm honored to have you as my coach. So thank you, everyone. And, you know how to find Jeff. I would continue to watch him. He does some awesome Facebook Live. Stay in touch with him. And hopefully one day you'll hire him as well.
Thank you, Desiree. Honored to be your coach and friend, and much love to all of you. Good night.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.